The mining ship Horizon's Edge moved slowly through the dark space of the Kepler belt. Captain Greg Morrison stood near the main window, looking at the screens that showed different rocks floating in space. His job was simple: find rocks with valuable metals inside them, mark their location, and move on to the next one. It was boring work, but it paid well enough. Greg was 42 years old, with gray starting to show in his brown hair. He had been working in deep space for almost 20 years now. He knew every sound his ship made, every beep and buzz of the computers, so when something new appeared on the sensors, he noticed it right away. Lisa Grant, his communications officer, made a small sound of surprise. She was young, only 25, with red hair tied back in a simple tail. Her eyes went wide as she looked at her screen. "Captain, you need to see this," she said. Her voice had a shake in it that Greg had never heard before. He walked over to her station and looked at the data. There was something big out there. Really big. The sensor said it was about 3 kilometers long. That was huge. But what made it strange was the energy reading. It was weak, very weak, but it was there. Rocks did not give off energy like that. "Get us closer," Greg ordered. Slow and careful. The ship turned and moved toward the strange object. As they got nearer, the main screen started to show what it looked like. At first, Greg thought there was something wrong with the camera. The shape did not make sense. It looked like some kind of animal, but that was impossible. Animals did not float in deep space. But as the image got clearer, there was no denying what he saw. It was a dragon. A real dragon, just like the ones from old Earth stories. It had a long body covered in scales, 4 legs with sharp claws, huge wings spread out to the sides, and a long neck with a head that had horns curving back from its skull. The problem was that the dragon was almost completely covered in something else. Millions and millions of small creatures clung to every part of its body. They looked like barnacles, the same kind that grew on old ships in Earth's oceans. But these were in space and they were alive. Each one was about as big as a human fist, with a hard shell that had a sick gray-white color. They were packed so close together that the dragon's scales were barely visible underneath. "What are those things?" Danny Price asked. He was the first officer, a tall man with dark skin and a calm way of talking. But even he sounded disturbed by what they were seeing. Kevin Hayes, the science officer, was already working on his computer, trying to get answers. He was the youngest person on the ship, just 23, but he was smart and good at his job. "Scanning now," Kevin said. His fingers moved fast over the controls. "The dragon, or whatever it is, reads as part machine and part living tissue. Some kind of biomechanical construct. Advanced technology, way beyond anything we have. The barnacle things are definitely alive. They are in some kind of sleep state, but their life signs are clear." "Is the dragon alive?" Greg asked. That was the question that mattered most to him, though he did not know why. Maybe it was because the creature looked so helpless, buried under all those parasites. Kevin kept working. The seconds felt long. Finally, he looked up with a strange expression on his face. "There is neural activity inside the dragon. Very faint, but it is there. Captain, this thing is not completely dead. Something is still alive inside it." Greg stared at the screen. The dragon's eyes were closed. Its mouth was open just a little bit, like it had been trying to breathe or cry out when the barnacles covered it. One wing was bent at a bad angle. The other was stretched out, frozen in place. It looked like the dragon had been fighting, trying to escape when it finally stopped moving. "How long has it been out here?" Greg asked quietly. Kevin ran some calculations based on the data his sensors were collecting. "Based on how thick the barnacle layer is and how much the energy signature has faded, I would say at least 800 years. Maybe more. Maybe a lot more. 800 years. Greg tried to imagine it. 800 years of floating in the cold dark of space, unable to move, unable to die, just slowly being drained of life by millions of parasites feeding on you. It was the most horrible thing he had ever heard of. "Can we get a better look at it?" he asked. "I want to see more details." Lisa adjusted the cameras and zoomed in on different parts of the dragon. Where the barnacles were thinner, they could see the scales underneath. They were beautiful, a deep blue color that seemed to shine with its own light even after all this time. The technology mixed into the dragon's body was incredible. Wires that looked like veins ran under the scales. Plates of metal were fused perfectly with organic tissue. Whoever or whatever had built this creature had been masters of their craft. "I have never seen anything like this," Kevin said. "This is not just advanced technology. This is art. This is something someone put their whole heart into making." Danny cleared his throat. Captain, what do we do? Do we report this to the company? That was the logical thing to do. They were a mining ship, not a rescue vessel. The company that hired them would want to know about this discovery, but they would also want the ship to get back to work. There was no profit in staring at a dying alien creature, no matter how strange or sad it was. But Greg could not stop looking at the dragon. There was something about it that got under his skin. Maybe it was the way it was positioned, like it had been trying to protect itself. Maybe it was knowing that something inside it was still alive, still aware after centuries of torture. Or maybe it was just that Greg had always hated seeing anything suffer. His grandmother had raised him after his parents died in a transport accident. She had been a rescue worker, someone who pulled people out of collapsed buildings and burning ships. She used to tell him that the measure of a person was not what they did when it was easy. It was what they did when everyone else had walked away. "I'm going over there," Greg said. The bridge went quiet. Everyone turned to look at him. "Captain, we do not know if those barnacles are dangerous," Danny said carefully. "They could be toxic. They could spread to our ship. We should at least wait until we know more." "I will wear a full containment suit," Greg replied. "But I am not leaving that thing out there without at least taking a closer look. Something did this to it on purpose. Those barnacles did not just show up by accident. Someone wanted this dragon to suffer." He looked at his crew. They were good people, all of them. They had been working together for 3 years and they trusted each other. "I am not ordering anyone to come with me," Greg said. "This is my choice. But I need to see it up close. I need to understand what happened," Lisa spoke up. "I will prep the shuttle, Captain. I will get the containment suit ready," Kevin added. Danny sighed, but he was smiling a little. "I will monitor from here and keep the ship ready in case you need emergency pickup." "But sir, for the record, I think you are crazy." "Noted," Greg said. 20 minutes later, Greg was suited up and sitting in the small shuttle. The containment suit was bulky and uncomfortable, but it would protect him from almost anything. The shuttle's engines fired, and he felt the small craft leave the bay of the main ship. As he got closer to the dragon, it got bigger and bigger in his view. 3 kilometers was an enormous size. Up close, he could see more details. The barnacles pulsed slowly like they were breathing. Their shells had a wet look to them, even though there was no air or water in space. Between some of them, he could see small gaps where the dragon's scales showed through. Those scales still had light in them, still had color, even after all this time. Greg brought the shuttle in close to one of the dragon's wings. He used the magnetic anchors to lock the shuttle in place, then opened the door and stepped out into space. His boots connected with the dragon's surface, the magnets in them keeping him attached. He put his hand on one of the exposed scales. Even through the thick glove of his suit, he could feel something. A vibration so faint he almost missed it. Energy, still flowing through this creature's body. Life holding on by the thinnest thread. "I am sorry," Greg whispered. He did not know if anything could hear him. He did not even know if the dragon had ears or could understand human speech. But he felt like he needed to say it. "I am sorry this happened to you. I'm sorry you were alone for so long." Back on the horizon's edge, Kevin's voice came through Greg's helmet radio. "Captain, I found something in our database. These barnacles, they are called Drakkar leeches. There is not much information about them, but what I found is bad. They are parasites that feed on biomechanical life forms. They drain energy over hundreds of years. The records say they bond at a molecular level with their host. Trying to remove them would probably kill whatever they are attached to." Greg looked at the millions of leeches covering the dragon. Even if there was a way to remove them safely, it would take forever. Years, maybe decades. And they were just a mining crew. They did not have the tools or the knowledge for something like this. The smart thing to do was to leave. Mark the location, report it to the authorities, and let someone else deal with it. That was what any reasonable person would do. But as Greg stood there on the dragon's wing, feeling that faint vibration of life under his hand, he knew he could not walk away. Maybe it was stupid. Maybe it was impossible. But he had to try. Greg stood on the dragon's wing for a long time, just looking at the creature buried under all those parasites. The stars around him were bright and cold, and he felt very small. But he also felt something else, a determination that started in his chest and spread through his whole body. "Kevin, Lisa, Danny," he said into his radio, "I need you to run some tests. I want to know if there is any way we can help this thing. Any way at all." There was silence on the other end for a few seconds. Then Danny's voice came through, sounding worried. Captain, the company is not going to be happy if we spend time on this. We have quotas to meet. We are supposed to be mapping mineral deposits, not playing rescue mission for an alien creature. I know what we are supposed to be doing, Greg said. His voice was calm but firm. But I am still the captain of this ship, and I am telling you to look for solutions. Can you do that? Another pause. Then Danny said, Yes, sir. We will see what we can find. Greg took a few more minutes looking at the dragon before he returned to the shuttle. As he flew back to the horizon's edge, he thought about what he was doing. It was probably foolish. It might cost him his job. But every time he closed his eyes, he saw that dragon, frozen in its moment of agony. And he knew he could not just leave it there. When he got back to the ship, his crew was already hard at work. Kevin had his computer screens filled with medical data and biological research papers. Lisa was sending messages to experts across human space asking for advice. Danny was running calculations on his tablet, trying to figure out what resources they would need. What have you found? Greg asked as he took off the containment suit. Kevin looked up, his young face serious. Not much that is helpful, sir. The Drakkar leeches are rare, and there is not a lot of research on them. Most species that encounter them just avoid them. The few records we have say that once they attach to a host, that host is basically doomed. The bond is too strong to break without killing both the leech and the host. There has to be something, Greg insisted. We have medical technology that can do incredible things. Nanosurgery, cellular reconstruction, genetic repair. There has to be a way. Lisa turned in her chair. I sent messages to 3 xenobiology labs and 2 advanced medical research centers. I explained the situation and asked if they had any ideas. 2 of them have already replied. Both said the same thing. It is impossible. Greg felt frustration building in him, but he pushed it down. Keep looking. There has to be someone who knows something useful. For the next 6 hours, the crew searched. They went through every database they could access. They contacted experts on alien biology, parasitology, and advanced medicine. Most of the answers were discouraging. A few people were interested in the discovery and wanted to study it, but none of them had solutions for actually helping the dragon. Greg was sitting in his quarters, staring at the wall and trying not to feel defeated, when Lisa knocked on his door. Come in, he said. She entered holding her tablet. There was a small smile on her face, the first one Greg had seen in hours. I think I found something, she said. It is not much, but it might be a start. She handed him the tablet. On the screen was a research paper about nanosurgery techniques. Greg read through it quickly. The paper talked about using tiny medical robots smaller than cells to separate one type of tissue from another. The robots could be programmed to recognize specific molecular structures and carefully dissolve the bonds between them. This has been used to remove tumors and repair damaged organs, Lisa explained. It has never been tried on anything like those leeches, but the principle is the same. The nanorobots could potentially identify where the leech tissue ends and the dragon tissue begins, then separate them molecule by molecule. Greg felt hope starting to grow. How long would something like this take? Lisa's smile faded a little. That is the problem, Captain. The leeches are attached at billions of points across the dragon's body. Even with millions of nanorobots working at once, it would take years to remove them all. Maybe 5 years, maybe 10, maybe more. And someone would need to stay with the dragon the whole time? Yes, sir. The process would need constant monitoring. The nanorobots would need to be reprogrammed as they learned more about the leech and dragon biology. The dragon's vital signs would need to be watched to make sure it stayed stable. It would be a full-time job for however many years it took. Greg looked at the numbers on the screen. 5 to 10 years. That was a long time. That was a huge chunk of a person's life. The mining company would never agree to it. They would fire him immediately. He would lose his career, his income, probably his reputation. Other companies would not want to hire someone who abandoned their job to save an alien creature. But then he thought about the dragon again. 800 years of slow death. 800 years of being trapped and helpless. What were 5 or 10 years of his life compared to that? Set it up, Greg said. We are going to do this. Lisa's eyes went wide. Captain, are you sure? This will end your career. You know that, right? I know. Set it up anyway. She nodded slowly, then left to start making arrangements. Greg sat back in his chair and took a deep breath. He thought about calling his sister, telling her what he was about to do. She would think he was crazy. Most people would. But his grandmother would have understood. She would have been proud. The next few days were busy. They had to order the nanorobots, which were expensive. Greg used his own savings to pay for the first batch. They had to set up monitoring equipment around the Dragon. They had to create a small habitat module where Greg could live while he did the work. And then the mining company called. The conversation went exactly as Greg had expected. His boss, a man named Richard Cole, was furious. "You are telling me you want to abandon your mission to save some alien creature?" Richard's face on the video screen was red with anger. "Do you have any idea how much money you are costing us? Every day that ship sits there doing nothing is a day we are losing profits." "I understand that, sir," Greg said calmly. "But this is important. This creature has been suffering for centuries. We have a chance to help it. We are not a charity, Morrison. We are a business. You were hired to mine asteroids, not play hero. I am ordering you to leave that thing and get back to work immediately." "I cannot do that, sir." Richard's face got even redder. "Cannot or will not?" "Will not. Then you are fired. Effective immediately. I am recalling the Horizon's Edge and its crew. You can stay there if you want, but you will do it without company resources. Good luck surviving in space with no ship, no supplies, and no support." The screen went black. Greg sat there for a moment, feeling the weight of what he had just done. He was officially unemployed. He had just thrown away 20 years of career building. But he did not feel regret. He felt certain. Lisa, Kevin, and Danny came to his quarters an hour later. They all looked worried. "We heard about the call with Richard," Danny said. "Captain, we want you to know that we think what you are doing is right. It might be crazy, but it is right." "The company is recalling the ship in 3 days," Kevin added. "We have to go with it. But we will help you get set up before we leave. We will make sure you have everything you need. And we will spread the word about what you are doing," Lisa said. "Maybe we can get you some support. Some supplies sent out here. You should not have to do this completely alone." Greg felt grateful for his crew. They were good people. "Thank you. All of you. I know this seems insane." "It does," Danny agreed. "But sometimes the right thing seems insane. That does not make it wrong." For the next 3 days, they worked around the clock. They set up a small habitat module on the Dragon's back right between its wings. The module had life support, a bed, a small kitchen area, and all the monitoring equipment Greg would need. They installed solar panels to provide power. They loaded the module with 6 months' worth of food and water, which was all they could fit. They also launched the first batch of nanorobots. Millions of tiny machines, each one programmed with the information they had about leech biology. The robots spread across the Dragon's surface and started their work. It was slow, painfully slow, but it was working. The first few leeches began to dissolve, their molecular bonds with the Dragon breaking down bit by bit. On the last day, before the Horizon's Edge left, the whole crew stood in the habitat module with Greg. They shook hands. Danny gave him a firm hug. "You are the best captain I ever worked for," Danny said. "Do not die out here, okay?" "I will do my best," Greg promised. Lisa had tears in her eyes. "We will send help. I promise. Somehow we will get you supplies and support." Kevin just nodded, too emotional to speak. Then they were gone. Greg watched through the small window as the Horizon's Edge fired its engines and moved away. Soon it was just a bright spot in the distance, and then it was gone completely. Greg was alone in a tiny habitat module on the back of a dying alien dragon, millions of kilometers from the nearest human settlement. He had enough food for 6 months. The nanorobots would run out of power in about the same time if he could not get more. After that, well, he tried not to think about after that. He turned to the monitoring screens and looked at the data. The nanorobots had removed 3 leeches so far, 3 out of millions. At this rate, it would take centuries. But Greg was not discouraged. He was just getting started. The first month was the hardest. Greg had never been truly alone before, not like this. On ships, there were always other people around. On space stations, there were crowds and noise and life. But here, in his small habitat module attached to Drake's back, there was only silence and the soft hum of machines. He fell into a routine because routines kept him sane. Every morning, he woke up and checked the monitoring screens. He looked at Drake's vital signs, making sure the Dragon was stable. He checked the nanorobot progress, seeing how many leeches had been removed overnight. Then he ate a simple breakfast and started his real work. The nanorobots needed constant adjustment. As they learned more about the leech biology, Greg had to reprogram them to be more efficient. The first week it took 3 days to remove a single leech, but Greg studied the data, figured out better approaches, and improved the programming. By the end of the first month, the robots could remove a leech in about 6 hours. It still was not fast enough. At that rate, it would take decades. But it was progress. What surprised Greg was that word of what he was doing spread across human space faster than he expected. Lisa had kept her promise. She told people about the dragon and about Greg's mission to save it. News organizations picked up the story. Scientists became interested. And slowly, support started coming. A supply ship arrived at the end of the second month. The captain, a woman named Julie Porter, had volunteered to bring supplies out to Greg's location. She brought food, water, more nano-robots, and messages from people across human space. "You are kind of famous now," Julie told him over the radio. "People are calling you the Dragon Keeper. There are donation funds set up to keep you supplied. Schools are teaching kids about what you are doing." Greg was embarrassed by the attention. "I am just doing what anyone should do." "Maybe," Julie said. "But you are the one actually doing it. That matters." After she left, Greg read through the messages. There were thousands of them. Children had drawn pictures of him and Drake. Scientists offered advice on improving the nano-robot efficiency. Engineers sent designs for better solar panels and life support systems. And ordinary people, just regular humans living their lives, sent messages of encouragement and hope. One message was from a man named Carl Bennett who wrote, "My daughter was in an accident 5 years ago. The doctor said she would never wake up. But we did not give up. We stayed by her bed every day for 3 years. Last month she opened her eyes. She is talking now, learning to walk again. I know what you are doing is different, but I understand why you are doing it. Never give up." Greg felt tears in his eyes as he read that. He was not alone in this. Humanity was with him. The work continued. Months turned into a year. The nanorobots got better and better at their job. Greg learned more about Drake's biology than any human had ever known about this kind of creature. The dragon was incredible. Its body was a perfect fusion of organic tissue and advanced technology. The scales were not just armor. They were solar collectors that could absorb energy from stars. The wings were not just for show. They could generate force fields that allowed flight in space. Every system had backups and backups for the backups. Whoever had designed Drake had wanted this creature to survive almost anything, but they had not planned for the Drakkar leeches. These parasites were specifically designed to attack biomechanical life forms. They drained energy, yes, but they also released a toxin that prevented the host from shutting down completely. It kept the host alive and aware while it slowly died. It was cruel in a way that made Greg angry every time he thought about it. "What kind of species does this?" he asked Drake one night. He had gotten into the habit of talking to the dragon every day. It helped with the loneliness, and he hoped that maybe somehow Drake could hear him. What kind of beings create something just to make others suffer? There was no answer, of course, but Greg continued talking anyway. "I had a dog when I was a kid," he said. "His name was Buddy. He was a good dog, friendly to everyone. One day he got hit by a car. The driver did not even stop. Buddy's back legs were crushed. The vet said we should put him down, that he would never walk again. But my grandmother said no. She said Buddy deserved a chance. We spent 6 months doing physical therapy with him. Every day helping him move his legs, encouraging him to try. And you know what? He walked again. He never ran like he used to, but he could walk. He lived 5 more happy years. My grandmother taught me that day that giving up on someone is easy. Fighting for them is hard, but it is worth it." Greg looked at the monitoring screens. They showed Drake's neural activity. It had been slowly increasing over the months. Whatever consciousness existed inside the dragon, it was getting stronger. "You are going to make it, Drake," Greg said firmly. "I promise you that." Year 2 brought new challenges. Some of the equipment started breaking down. The solar panels were not as efficient as they used to be. The life support system developed a leak that took Greg 3 days to fix. He was not an engineer, but he learned quickly because he had to. More supply ships came, bringing not just food and equipment, but also volunteers. Scientists wanted to study Drake up close. Engineers wanted to help improve the habitat systems. But Greg was careful about who he let near the dragon. Some people saw Drake as just an interesting specimen to study. Greg saw Drake as a person who deserved respect and privacy. He did accept help from a bioengineer named Paula Green. She was in her 50s, with gray hair and kind eyes. She spent 2 weeks with Greg, helping him improve the nanorobot programming. Under her guidance, they got the removal time down to 2 hours per leech. "You have a gift for this," Paula told him. "Have you ever considered studying bioengineering formally?" Greg laughed. "I barely finished high school. I am just a mining ship captain who got lucky." "You are more than that," Paula said seriously. "You have saved this creature's life. You have advanced our understanding of biomechanical systems by years, maybe decades. Do not sell yourself short." After Paula left, Greg thought about what she had said. He had never considered himself special. He was just a regular guy doing what felt right. But maybe that was enough. Maybe doing the right thing, even when it was hard, was its own kind of special. Year 3 started with a breakthrough. Greg had been working on a new approach to the nanorobot programming, using some of Paula's techniques combined with his own observations. He activated the new program and watched the data carefully. The robots worked faster. Much faster. A leech that would have taken 2 hours to remove took only 30 minutes. Greg ran the program again on another leech, then another. Each time, the result was the same. 30 minutes per leech, he did the math. There were approximately 14 million leeches covering Drake. At 30 minutes each, working 24 hours a day, it would take about 800 years. Still too long, but the nanorobots learned as they worked. The more leeches they removed, the better they got at it. By the time they had removed 1,000 leeches, they were down to 20 minutes each. Then 15, then 10. Greg started to believe that this might actually work. He might actually save Drake within his lifetime. He celebrated by cooking a real meal instead of just eating ration bars. The habitat had a small kitchen area, and one of the supply ships had brought him some fresh vegetables as a treat. He made a simple stir-fry and ate it while looking at the stars through the window. "We are doing it, Drake," he said. "We are really doing it. Another year, maybe 2, and you will be free." The dragon's head was almost completely clear of leeches now. Greg could see its face properly for the first time. It was beautiful. The scales were deep blue with hints of purple and silver. The horns swept back elegantly. The eyes were closed, but Greg could see they were large, probably golden or yellow in color. The expression on Drake's face looked peaceful now, not agonized like it had been when Greg first found it. Month by month, more of Drake was revealed. The chest area came clear, showing intricate patterns in the scales. The front legs emerged, powerful and tipped with claws that looked like they could tear through steel. The wings slowly appeared, gossamer and delicate despite their enormous size. Greg documented everything. He took pictures and wrote notes about what he found. Scientists back in human space were fascinated by the data he sent them. They called Drake one of the most significant discoveries in human history. But Greg did not care about that. He just wanted Drake to be okay. In the middle of year 3, something changed. Greg was doing his morning check of the monitors when he saw it. Drake's neural activity had spiked. Not just a little increase like he had been seeing for months, but a major jump. The pattern was different too. It looked intentional, organized. Greg's heart started beating faster. He moved closer to the window that looked out at Drake's head. "Drake?" he called out. "Can you hear me?" For a long moment, nothing happened. Then slowly one of Drake's eyes opened. It was golden, just as Greg had imagined. The pupil was vertical, like a cat's, and it was looking right at him. Greg felt like his breath had been knocked out of his chest. After 3 years, after all this work, Drake was awake. The dragon was looking at him with an eye that held intelligence and awareness. "Hey there," Greg said softly. He would figure. Having Drake awake changed everything. Greg had grown used to the silence, to working alone with only his own voice for company. But now there was someone else there, watching, aware. It made Greg more careful with his movements, more conscious of everything he did. The first few days were strange. Drake would open that golden eye occasionally and watch Greg work. The dragon did not move, probably could not move yet with so many leeches still attached. But the eye followed Greg around the habitat, tracking his movements with clear interest. Greg kept talking even more than before. "I know this must be confusing for you. You have been asleep for a long time. Centuries, actually. These parasites on you are called Drakkar leeches. They have been draining your energy and keeping you trapped. But we are removing them. It is slow work, but we are making progress." The eye blinked. That was the only response, but it felt like acknowledgement. On the 5th day after Drake woke up, something new happened. Greg was adjusting the nano-robot programming when his communication console started beeping. That was odd. The console only made that sound when receiving an incoming message, but he was not expecting any supply ships for another week. He went to the console and looked at the screen. What he saw made him freeze. There was data streaming in, but it was not from a ship. It was coming from Drake. The Dragon was transmitting information directly to Greg's equipment. Greg's hands shook as he worked to decode the signal. It took him almost an hour, but finally text began appearing on his screen. It was being translated from some alien language format into English by the ship's computer. The first message was simple. "Thank you." Greg stared at those 2 words for a long time. Then he typed back, "You are welcome. Can you understand me?" There was a pause. Then more text appeared. "Yes, your language is simple. I learned it from your computer systems. My name is Krathvel. I am a guardian of the Draconic Concordat, or I was. I do not know if the Concordat still exists." Greg pulled up a chair and sat down at the console. His heart was racing. He was talking to an alien intelligence that was older than human civilization. "My name is Greg Morrison. I am human. We are a young species. We only started exploring space a couple 100 years ago. I know. I have accessed your databases. Humans are very young. You have barely left your birth world. Why did you help me? You gain nothing from this." Greg thought about how to answer that. "Because you needed help. Because leaving you here to die would have been wrong. That is what humans do. We help each other. We help others." There was a long pause. Then Krathvel wrote, "Not all species are like this. Most beings help when it benefits them. You have spent years of your life, sacrificed your career, lived in isolation. For a stranger. For a creature you did not even know was conscious. This is unusual. Maybe," Greg typed. "But it is who we want to be. We are not perfect. Humans do bad things sometimes, but we try to be better. We try to help when we can." Over the following days and weeks, Greg and Krathvel communicated more. The Dragon's responses got longer and more complex as it recovered strength. Krathvel told Greg about the Draconic Concordat, a group of bioengineered guardians who watched over young civilizations across the galaxy. They did not interfere directly, but they protected developing species from threats they were not ready to face. "We were created by a species called the Architects," Krathvel explained. "They were masters of biotechnology. They made us to be eternal protectors. We do not age. We do not need to eat or breathe. We draw energy from stars and cosmic radiation. We were meant to last forever." "What happened to you?" Greg asked. "How did you end up covered in those leeches?" The response took a long time to come. When it did, Greg could sense pain in the words even though they were just text on a screen. "There is a species called the Drakkar. They are conquerors. They spread across the galaxy, consuming resources and enslaving other species. The Concordat opposed them. We protected young civilizations from Drakkar aggression. This made the Drakkar hate us. They created the leeches specifically to use against us. They are designed to torture, not kill quickly. They wanted us to suffer as a warning to others." "How many of you were there?" Greg asked. 50. 50 guardians spread across the galaxy. I do not know how many survived the war with the Drakkar. I was on patrol when they ambushed me. They released millions of leeches. I fought, but there were too many. They covered me in minutes. I felt myself shutting down, felt my systems going into emergency mode. The last thing I remember before going dormant was floating away from the battle, hoping I would drift into a star and end it quickly. But that did not happen. I just drifted, and the leeches fed on me, and I was aware the whole time, trapped in my own body, unable to move or scream or die. Greg felt sick reading that. I am so sorry. No one should go through that. It was 847 years, Krathvel wrote. 8 centuries of darkness and pain. I thought I would be there forever. Then I felt the leeches starting to die. I felt movement on my scales. I felt someone working to free me. I did not understand what was happening. I thought perhaps the Drakkar had returned to finish what they started. But then I woke enough to see you. A small creature, alone, working day and night to remove the parasites. No weapons, no army. Just you and your tiny machines. I did not understand why. I told you why, Greg typed. Because it was the right thing to do. I am beginning to understand that humans define the right thing differently than most species. Most beings would have seen the effort required and walked away. The cost was too high for no gain. But you did not walk away, Greg smiled. No, I did not. As more weeks passed, Krathvel recovered more strength. The dragon started being able to move small amounts. A claw would twitch, a wing would shift slightly. Each movement was progress, a sign that the dragon's systems were coming back online after centuries of dormancy. The communication between Greg and Krathvel became easier too. The dragon learned to express emotion through text, adding nuance that had been missing at first. And Greg learned to understand the alien way Krathvel thought about the universe. Tell me about your people, Krathvel asked one day. I have read your databases, but that only gives me facts. I want to understand humans, Greg thought about that. How do you explain an entire species? We are social creatures. We need each other. We build communities, families, friendships. We create art and music and stories. We explore because we are curious about everything. We make mistakes, a lot of them. We fight with each other sometimes. But we also forgive. We try to learn from our errors. We dream of being better than we are. You are young and optimistic. Most species lose that optimism as they age and face the harsh realities of the universe. Maybe, Greg typed. But I hope we keep it. I hope we always remember to help people who need help. I hope we always choose compassion over convenience. You give me hope, Greg Morrison. Hope that the universe still has goodness in it. Hope that my centuries of suffering were not in vain if they led to meeting you. Greg felt tears in his eyes again. He seemed to cry a lot these days. You are going to be free soon. Another year, maybe less. The nanorobots are working faster every day. When you are free, what will you do? There was a long pause. Then Krathvel wrote, I will find out if any other guardians survived. I will try to rebuild what was lost. But first, I will do something for your people. You saved my life. By the ancient laws of the Concordat, that creates a debt. But beyond the debt, I want to help humans because you showed me kindness when you did not have to. You do not owe us anything, Greg said. I did not do this for a reward. I know. That is precisely why I want to help. True kindness is rare in the universe, Greg Morrison. When you find it, you must protect it and encourage it. Humanity has something special. Do not lose it as you grow and face the challenges ahead. Over the next months, Greg and Krathvel talked about many things. The dragon told stories of civilizations that had risen and fallen, of wonders on distant worlds, of the beauty and danger of deep space. Greg told Krathvel about Earth, about human history, about his own life and the grandmother who had taught him to never give up on people. The work continued. More leeches were removed every day. Drake's body was almost completely clear now. The dragon's true beauty was revealed. The scales shimmered with inner light. The wings, when Krathvel could finally move them, were translucent and seemed to be made of pure energy held in a physical form. The claws gleamed like polished metal. Every part of the dragon was a work of art. The architects who made you were masters, Greg said one day, looking at Drake through the window. They were. They created us not just to function, but to inspire. They believed that beauty had power, that seeing something magnificent could change how beings thought about the universe. They were right. You are the most beautiful thing I have ever seen. Thank you, Greg. That means much to me. Finally, after 4 years and 7 months, the last leech was removed. Greg watched on his monitors as the final parasite dissolved, its molecular bonds broken by the tireless nanorobots. Drake was free. The dragon's body immediately began to change. Systems that had been in minimal power mode for centuries suddenly surged to full strength. The scales glowed brighter. Energy patterns raced across Drake's body like lightning. The wings expanded, growing larger as Krathvel floated in space before Greg, free for the first time in over 800 years. The dragon's wings spread wide, energy fields shimmering between the physical structures. The scales pulsed with light and patterns that seemed to express emotion that words could not capture. Joy, relief, and something else, something deeper. Greg's communication console beeped. Krathvel's message came through, and this time there was something different in it. The text had a weight to it, a formality that had not been there before. Greg Morrison of Earth, you have given me back my life. By the ancient laws of the Draconic Concordat, I owe you a debt that cannot be measured. But more than duty or debt, you have given me something I thought I had lost forever. Hope. Hope that goodness still exists in this universe. Greg typed back quickly. You do not owe me anything, Krathvel. I'm just glad you are okay. You say this and I believe you mean it. You truly did not help me for reward or recognition. You did it because you could not walk away from someone in pain. This is the essence of what the Concordat was meant to protect. Species like yours, who choose compassion even when it costs them dearly. The dragon's body began to glow brighter, energy building for something. Greg could feel it even through his suit, a vibration in the space around him. I must leave now, Krathvel continued. I must search for other guardians who may have survived. I must discover what has become of the galaxy in my absence. But I make you this promise, Greg Morrison. When humanity needs a friend, when your people face dangers they cannot overcome alone, call for me. I will come. This I swear on my existence and the memory of the architects who created me. Will I see you again? Greg typed, surprised by how much emotion was in that question. Over 4 years he had come to think of Krathvel as a friend. The idea of never seeing the dragon again hurt. Yes, I do not abandon my friends. And you, Greg Morrison, are the truest friend I have ever known. The light around Krathvel intensified until Greg had to look away. When he looked back, the dragon was gone. Faster than light travel had taken Krathvel away in an instant, leaving Greg alone once more in the silent dark of space. But this time, the loneliness felt different. He had done what he set out to do. He had saved a life. He had made a friend. And he had proven something important, though he was not sure exactly what. Greg looked at his habitat module, at the equipment that had been his home and workshop for over 4 years. It was time to go back, time to return to human space and see what his life had become. A supply ship arrived 3 days later. The captain, an older man named Pete Jackson, helped Greg pack up his equipment. You are famous, you know, Pete said as they worked. Everyone knows about the Dragon Keeper. Schools teach about you. Scientists want to interview you. You are a hero, Greg shook his head. I am not a hero. I just did what anyone should do. But most people would not have done it, Pete insisted. That is what makes it special. You chose to help when it was hard, when it cost you everything. That is the definition of heroism, whether you like it or not. When Greg returned to Earth, he found that Pete was right. He was famous. News organizations wanted to interview him. Universities wanted him to speak. The government wanted to honor him. It was overwhelming for someone who just wanted to be left alone, but he understood why people cared. The story of the dragon and the human who refused to let it die had captured humanity's imagination. It was a story about who they wanted to be as a species, kind, determined, willing to help even when it was difficult. Greg did some interviews. He spoke at schools, telling children about Krathvel and the importance of compassion. He met with scientists and shared everything he had learned about biomechanical systems. The data from his 4 years with Krathvel advanced human medicine by decades, but mostly he tried to live a quiet life. He bought a small house near the ocean on Earth. He adopted a dog, a mutt from a shelter that reminded him of Buddy. He spent his days reading, walking on the beach, and sometimes looking up at the stars and wondering where Krathvel was. Years passed. Greg got older. His hair turned completely gray. He developed a limp from an old injury that never quite healed right, but he was content. He had done something that mattered. He had made a difference. Then, 23 years after Krathvel had flown away, the message came. Greg was 71 years old, sitting on his porch and watching the sunset, when every communication device in his house started beeping at once. He went inside and found an urgent message from the human government. The Drakkar had returned. A fleet of their ships had appeared at the edge of human space, demanding that humanity submit to their rule. They were powerful, far more advanced than humans. Their weapons could destroy entire planets, their ships numbered in the thousands, and they had given humanity 1 week to surrender or be destroyed. The government was evacuating colonies, preparing defenses, doing everything they could, but everyone knew it was hopeless. Humanity was still young, still weak compared to ancient species like the Drakkar. They could fight, but they would lose. Greg sat in his living room reading the news reports and feeling fear twist in his stomach. After everything humanity had accomplished, after all the progress they had made, it might all end because of a species that believed in conquest over cooperation. Then he remembered Krathvel's promise. When humanity needs a friend, call for me. But how did you call a dragon? Greg had no way to contact Krathvel. The dragon could be anywhere in the galaxy. Even if Greg could send a message, it might not arrive in time. Still, he had to try. Greg went to his computer and composed a message. He did not know if it would work, but he sent it out on all frequencies, broadcasting it into space as strongly as his equipment would allow. Krathvel, this is Greg Morrison. Humanity needs help. The Drakkar have come. I'm sorry to ask this of you, but you said you would come if we needed a friend. We need one now. Then he waited. 1 day passed, then 2. The deadline from the Drakkar was getting closer. Human ships gathered at the edge of their space, preparing for a battle they could not win. On the 5th day, something appeared in orbit above Earth. It was not a ship. It was a dragon glowing with inner light, wings spread wide enough to be visible from the ground. But Krathvel was not alone. 6 more dragons appeared beside him, each one as magnificent as Krathvel, each one ancient and powerful. The dragons broadcast a message to Earth and to the Drakkar fleet. It was Krathvel's voice, strong and clear. I am Krathvel, 7th wing of the Draconic Concordat. These are my brothers and sisters, guardians who survived the old war. We have returned, and we declare humanity under our protection. Any species that threatens them threatens us. The Drakkar fleet hesitated. They had fought the dragons before and lost. Seeing 7 guardians together was enough to remind them of that old fear. Without firing a single shot, the Drakkar ships turned and jumped away to faster-than-light speed, fleeing back into deep space. Earth erupted in celebration. Humanity had been saved by the dragons, saved by the friend they had made decades ago when one human refused to let a stranger die. Krathvel came to Earth and found Greg. The dragon landed near his house, form shrinking down to something smaller that would not crush the building. It was still impressive, still beautiful, but now only about twice the size of a large elephant. Greg walked out to meet his old friend. He was old now, walking with a cane, but his smile was genuine and warm. You came, Greg said simply. I promised I would. Krathvel's voice came from the dragon's form, no longer needing a computer to translate. And I found others. 6 of my fellow guardians survived. When they heard what you did for me, when they learned about humanity's compassion, they wanted to meet your people. We have decided to make Earth our base. We will protect humanity as it grows and learns to navigate the galaxy. You do not have to do that, Greg said. You have already done so much. We want to. You showed us that there is still goodness in the universe worth protecting. You spent years of your life to save a stranger. That is rare, Greg Morrison. That is precious. We will not let it be destroyed. Greg felt tears running down his old face. Thank you, my friend. Over the following years, the dragons became humanity's guardians and teachers. They shared knowledge, helped humans advance their technology, and protected them from threats. But more importantly, they told other species about what Greg had done. About the human who spent years removing parasites from a dying dragon because it was the right thing to do. That story spread across the galaxy. It changed how other species saw humanity. They were not just another conquering species trying to claim territory. They were the ones who helped, the ones who showed compassion, the ones who refused to walk away from someone in need. It became humanity's reputation. When other species faced disasters, they called on humans for aid, knowing that humans would come. When conflicts arose, humans were asked to mediate, because they were trusted to care about fairness over profit. When exploration missions needed members, humans were included because their perspective was valued, all because one man refused to let a dragon die alone in the dark. Greg died peacefully in his sleep at the age of 84. Krathvel was there in the room keeping watch.